What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Real Life Betrayals. Today's story is heavy, about a wife who not only cheated, but also plotted to take the kids and still gaslights people about it to this very day. Buckle up, because this one gets wild. Back when I was in my early 20s living in Pennsylvania, I met the woman who would eventually become my ex-wife. We dated for a few years, and marriage started to enter the conversation. Wanting to give her and any future family we had a stable life, I enlisted in the Navy. I told her from the very beginning that whatever she wanted to do, work full-time, stay home with kids, or anything in between, I'd back her. Over the next 10 years, our life was a mix of her pursuing school, raising our 3 kids, and taking on part-time jobs here and there. I paid for several degree programs and vocational certificates to help her along the way. By the time I hit my 13th year in service, it was clear my Navy career was winding down. I asked her to step up more because I wanted to go back to school myself. I'd already supported her through a master's and several minors, so I wanted my turn. She wasn't thrilled, but eventually she joined the Navy Reserves as an officer, a path I had suggested for years. She took to it quickly and actually excelled. Before long, she was recommended for a posting overseas that would last at least a year. Here's the thing. Throughout our marriage, she cheated multiple times. Fights would end with her threatening to leave me and take the kids. And because of how the Navy system worked, I knew there wasn't much I could do. By then, I had been carrying the family for 15 years, so I reluctantly accepted certain things. We even had a conversation about it, because let's be real, there was no way she'd spend a year deployed without sleeping around. We came to a semi-open arrangement with rules. No romantic relationships, protection always, and no one directly in her chain of command. Same went for me. 1 year turned into 3, with short visits home in between. During this time, she had a close friend I initially joked about hooking up with since I wasn't seeing anyone. Without asking me, my wife went and told her friend about it. To my surprise, the friend was okay with it, and my wife liked the idea because it made her feel in control. Over time, that friend and I went from acquaintances to best friends, talking every day. Then, right before my wife's 2nd to 3rd year overseas, I picked her up from the airport. Something seemed off, but I chalked it up to stress. A few days later, her friend started acting strange. She finally asked me if my wife had been using her hall pass while deployed. I said my wife admitted to hooking up a couple times, but nothing more. The friend pressed, clearly knowing more than she wanted to say. After a bit of back and forth, she finally confessed. My wife had been bragging to her and others that she was in a full-blown relationship with a high-ranking officer overseas, and had been with him the entire time. Now I could stomach the casual hookups. I could even wrap my head around the relationship she had formed, painful as it was. But what shattered me was what came next. The reason her friend told me was because my wife had been planning something far worse. She wanted to take the kids overseas permanently, serve me divorce papers from there, and make it nearly impossible for me to fight for custody. Our supposed plan was that she'd take the kids overseas, I'd finish my degree, sell our house and car, then follow her out there. But behind my back, she was telling friends her actual plan. Once she had the kids in another country, she'd cut me off completely, leaving me without a home, without a job, and without my children. I confronted her, and of course she denied everything. She seemed more upset about who had ratted her out than the fact I knew the truth. She's a terrible liar. You have to drag the truth out piece by piece. I called a friend of mine who's a lawyer. Though he specializes in criminal law, he got some family law advice from colleagues. Luckily, I learned that where we lived, custody disputes required kids to remain at the home of record. That alone protected me from her scheme. Meanwhile, she was trying to spin the story, claiming she and this guy had talked about running away together, but never seriously considered it. She kept insisting we should still move overseas as planned and do counseling there. I pretended to go along with it, but told her the kids would fly with me instead of her. She was furious, which told me everything I needed to know. Finally, I told her I had class one night, and before I got home, she needed to send the other man a message cutting things off completely, telling him she would not contact him again, and he should never reach out to her. When I got home, the first thing I asked was if she did it. She swore she had. But by then, I already knew who she really was, that I told her she needed to cut him off completely. No messages, no social media, no contact of any kind. At first, I felt some relief, but that night I couldn't sleep. I lay there watching her breathe peacefully, and deep down I knew it wasn't going to be that simple. I grabbed my phone, opened Facebook, searched her name, and checked her friend list. Sure enough, he was still there. My stomach dropped. I shook her awake and shoved my phone in her face, demanding to know why he was still on her friends list. She tried to spin some excuse about how unfriending him would look suspicious to her coworkers, but I wasn't buying it. I told her no one cares or notices when someone gets unfriended, and called her out right there. The argument escalated, and eventually I stormed out of the room. I broke down completely, collapsing on the living room floor in tears. My oldest daughter came downstairs and found me like that. She saw me crying, and then she started crying too. She lay down beside me and held me, and it shattered me even more. While we were both there on the floor, my wife came down the stairs, stepped right over us without even a glance, went into the laundry room, changed into her workout clothes, and left for the gym. That moment told me everything I needed to know, but I was still desperate and foolish. I thought if she wouldn't stop, maybe I could force him to. He was in a much higher position at work, and if word got out about him messing around with a married woman, it would ruin his career. So I tracked down his wife through his Facebook profile, figured out his command details, and sent him a message warning him that if he ever reached out to her again, I'd inform his superiors, his parent command, and his wife. He read the message and immediately blocked me. That just made me push further. I used his Navy email address and sent him the same warning, making sure he knew I already had his command's information and his wife's contact. Blocking me wasn't going to make it go away. When she came home from the gym, I took her upstairs and confessed that I'd written him. Tears welled up in my eyes as I explained how desperate I was to save us. She started crying too, but not for me. Her first words were about him. "Oh my God, he must be terrified. Why would you threaten our careers?" That broke something in me. I was right there, her husband, pouring my heart out about how far I'd gone to try and keep us together, and she was worried about him. I froze inside, went out for a long walk, and came back with my mind made up. I told her flat out, me and the kids weren't going overseas. She tried to negotiate, suggesting maybe the kids could come later, after her flight. I told her no. None of us were going. She exploded, cursing at me. And when she slapped me, I caught her wrists and told her to never lay a hand on me again. She begged and pleaded, but I was done. From that point on, I started preparing my exit. When I returned later that day, I told her I was drafting an agreement. She agreed, probably thinking she'd talk her way out of it like she always had before. In the document, it was spelled out. If we split, I got full custody of the kids. She'd owe me 25% of her income in child support, and I kept the house. She signed it without hesitation, not realizing I wasn't playing the same game as before. The only reason I'd stayed through her past affairs was fear that she'd take the kids and disappear. But now, I had leverage. We had it put down legally, witnessed, and signed by a lawyer. For the next couple of weeks, I kept things civil, pretending to go along with her plan. She left thinking I'd bring the kids to her after graduation, but I already knew I wasn't going to. My decision hardened even more when one day while she was away, her laptop started buzzing with non-stop notifications. I'd never snooped in all our 15 years together, but the noise drove me crazy. As I went to close it, another message popped up, from him, on some new messaging app she'd been hiding. That was it. She was never going to stop. The day she flew back overseas, I drove her to the airport with the kids. She hugged them goodbye, then turned to me for one last embrace. I asked her if I'd booked tickets for us yet. When she said no, I raised my hand to keep her from touching me. That was the end. It's been me and my kids ever since. For years, I held it together while she lived overseas, but a few months ago she moved back here. And it's been hell. She acts like an overgrown child, entitled, manipulative, and constantly spreading lies about me. She's told people I said she deserved to be assaulted, told others I used to hit her, even told our kids that if they tried to leave her house, she'd have me arrested. None of it is true, and my older two call her out every time. Still, the damage is exhausting. I consulted a lawyer, And while they told me I can't sue her for slander unless I can prove financial loss, they did say I could file for an injunction. That process is already underway. Looking back, I realize I should have gone straight to a lawyer the first time she cheated. Staying only made things worse. Trying to salvage something with someone who had no intention of changing was never going to end any other way. I fought to the last shred of hope because I wanted to keep my family together, but the truth is, once that line was crossed, the relationship was doomed. Now I'm focused on protecting myself and my kids. She won't walk all over me again. This has been brutal, but if nothing else, it's made me stronger. And to anyone else who ever finds themselves in my shoes, don't waste your time trying to fix a cheater. Walk away, set your boundaries, and don't give up your dignity to someone who doesn't deserve it.